Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about the most vulnerable parts of your Glock, and I'm specifically talking generation 1 through 4, which is going to include Gen 3, which is the most popular and common one out there, particularly people building these polymer 80s. So that would be the trigger spring. That one click, no, dead. That time is dead. I have a broken trigger spring on this, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Right now it's completely dead. Yep, dead. Okay, so it's got a broken trigger spring. And I know it's broken because I can see it. Okay, if I lift this up over here, I'm gonna push up on my, right, and I can see that my, let me get underneath of there. I can see that my trigger spring is moving around. So I'm doing this so you guys can know and diagnose this yourself. So you see how that's moving around. So that's broken at the other end, right? The other end where it connects to the trigger bar, it broke. So this is a fairly cheap part. I mean, 3 years ago this was like a $2 part. You know, now it's a $6 part. You wanna get a whole bag full of trigger springs. All right, it's the most vulnerable part of your Glock Gen 1 through 4. In Gen 5, they changed it. This was probably the biggest, most important change that they have done to Glocks. They changed the trigger spring in Gen 5 so that, because this basically is a stretchy spring, so they changed it to a compression spring, okay, because the compression spring is a little bit stronger. The stretchy spring, you know, is basically a much, it's a weaker design, okay. So now that said, I still prefer Glock Gen 3s. The reason is because the patents have expired on the Glock Gen 3s, and I can have bags and bags and bags of parts, okay. Got a bag of loose parts here. That's all triggers over there, complete triggers. And these two bags came out of a big box full of bags like this. Okay, so that's why I love the Glock Gen 3s and AR-15s. The patents have expired on them. There's parts out there that are plentiful. They're made by lots of different companies, and also the knowledge of how to fix these guns is widely circulated. So right, so you've got a reliable gun, right? These are my 3 criteria for a good gun: reliable gun, lots of parts in circulation, lots of knowledge in wide circulation about how to fix the guns. Okay, so on your Glock Gen 3, you want to get, let me show you over here. So basically, this is the trigger group. So you can see that trigger. I'll actually take this apart. So there you go. There's the trigger spring in there, right? That's the part that broke on that one. Now the other part that you want to, the second most vulnerable part, would be the connector bar. Okay, that's this part here. Now the thing what happens with the connector bar, every time the slide goes forward, let me put this back together. Every time the slide goes forward, it basically hits it at this point right over here, right? It hits it, and what happens is when it pushes in on it, it makes the sear pop up. Okay, so every time the slide goes back and forth, it's rubbing against this part over here pretty hard, and it slowly wears that out. This is actually a used trigger that I actually pulled out of this gun here a couple of months ago. I think, now mind you, these are cheap eBay parts, so it's not going to be like Glock OEM parts or premium parts. These are cheap eBay parts that I have bought. You know, obviously I'm not putting this into red guns that I'm planning to go to war with. All right, these are basically plinking guns that I just use for fun and for training people. So I don't mind having putting cheap parts into them. Hey, it gives me an opportunity to practice fixing the guns. Okay, so you know, and I can also show people how to fix the guns when these things break. Okay, so this one that you see here, what happened with this one is the connector bar over here, that little connector that sticks out, had gotten worn away a little bit. So what I did is I took this apart, I removed the connector, it just slides out, and what I did is I bent it out a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw, since I got to take this gun apart anyway to fix it, I'm going to throw this trigger group in there, and I'm going to see if that adjustment that I did where I bent out the connector, not bend it in, bend it out, right, away from the housing, all right? You bend that little piece out, so that so that the slide basically activates it and pushes it in as it goes against it. It pushes in like that as it passes past it. So I'm going to throw this in there. I'm going to see if how well that modification worked and how long it will last. So I think I got something like about close to 5,000 rounds on this one before that got worn out. And then I put, it was on the same gun, I remember it because of the color. Then I put this one in. So I did about another 5,000 rounds on this before the trigger spring broke. So it seems like I'm getting about 5,000 rounds on these eBay lower parts kits before something breaks. With the my Glock 17, that's all factory OEM. That went 75,000 rounds the first time before something broke, and that something was the trigger spring. Okay, so on factory OEM, same thing. That trigger spring was the same thing that broke, but that went 75,000 rounds before it went the first time. I did a video on that. And then it went another, after that was changed, it went 20,000 rounds. So the second time after it was replaced, and I sent it out to Glock to fix it because it's a free fix. I said let them fix it. So after they changed the trigger spring, and I believe they changed a few other parts in the gun as well. From that point, it went another 20,000 rounds. Okay, so the first time it got 75,000 rounds. The first time, the second time, it only went 20,000 rounds. So, I would say let's average it to about 30,000 rounds, all right? 30, 40,000 rounds. But that is a vulnerable area, okay? Even with factory OEM parts, that's probably the first thing that's going to break, your trigger spring. Second thing that's going to wear out is your connector, okay? So those are the parts that you want to have, have spare parts of, and be ready to replace them. If you have a factory Glock, I would probably get either factory, OEM replacement parts or get premium parts. Don't put like cheap eBay crap into that. But if you're building polymer 80s and you're building a lot of them and you're just using this as a plinking gun, by all means experiment with it. Throw some cheap parts in there, see how much see how far the gun goes before it breaks. But you're gonna get at least 5,000 rounds. I mean, unless you're somebody like me that's able to shoot almost every day, chances are you're not gonna be changing these parts that often. Okay, 5,000 rounds is a lot of rounds for a lot of people out there. For most people out there. Okay, for me, I don't know, it's maybe about 2 weeks of shooting. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you got some comments, I'll put in the comment section. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys soon.